Marcus Chen stood in line at Stellar Brews, the cramped coffee shop tucked between a quantum mechanics repair shop and a used Starship dealership on Kepler Station's lower deck. The artificial gravity felt lighter than Earth normal, making his worn work boots feel almost bouncy against the metal grating. After pulling a 14-hour shift maintaining the station's waste recycling systems, all he wanted was a simple coffee and maybe one of those synthetic pastries that almost tasted like his grandmother's apple turnovers. The line moved with typical space station efficiency, which was to say, not at all. Marcus checked his comm device, noting he had exactly 37 minutes before his next shift began. Sleep was becoming a luxury he couldn't afford, not with the medical bills piling up for his sister's treatment back on Earth. Ahead of him stood a figure that immediately caught his attention, though he tried not to stare. She was tall, easily 6.5 feet, with the distinctive blue-tinted skin and elongated limbs of a Zilithian. Her clothing was simple, a dark coat that had seen better days, practical boots, and a scarf wrapped around her neck despite the station's controlled temperature. What struck Marcus most were her eyes, a deep violet that seemed to hold galaxies within them, but shadowed with exhaustion that he recognized all too well. When her turn came, she approached the counter with fluid grace. The human barista, a kid who couldn't be more than 20, looked up expectantly. "1 thermal brew, please," she said in accented standard, her voice carrying the musical quality typical of her species. "That'll be 12 credits," the barista replied. Marcus watched as she patted her coat pockets, then checked a small bag slung across her shoulder. Her shoulders sagged slightly, and she began to turn away from the counter. "Actually, never mind," she started. "2 thermal brews," Marcus interrupted, stepping forward. "And whatever pastries you've got that aren't completely synthetic." He placed his credit chip on the counter before the Zilithian woman could protest. She turned to him, those violet eyes wide with surprise. "You don't need to." "It's fine," Marcus said with a tired smile. "Trust me, I know what it's like to come up short. We've all been there." The barista processed the payment, 28 credits that represented nearly an hour of Marcus's wages, and handed over 2 steaming cups and a small bag of pastries. Marcus offered 1 cup to the woman, who accepted it with obvious gratitude. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft. "I'm Zara Nth, but most humans call me Zara. Marcus Chen, and it's no problem, really." He gestured toward a small table near the viewport showing the swirling nebula beyond the station. "Want to sit? I've got a few minutes before I need to get back to work." They settled at the table, and Marcus found himself genuinely curious about his companion. Most Zilithians he'd encountered were either high-ranking diplomats or wealthy merchants. Zara seemed different. There was something grounded about her, despite her obvious exhaustion. "What brings you to Kepler Station?" he asked, sipping his coffee and savoring the real caffeine hit. Zara's fingers wrapped around her cup like she was drawing warmth from it. "Business," she said simply, then seemed to consider her words. "I'm trying to solve a problem that's been consuming my life for the past few years." "Anything you want to talk about?" "Sometimes a stranger's perspective helps." She studied his face for a long moment as if weighing whether to trust him. "My people have certain expectations about family lines. I'm under pressure to produce an heir, but it's complicated." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. He'd heard about Zilithian cultural practices, their complex genetic requirements, the importance of bloodlines in their society. "That sounds incredibly stressful." "It is," Zara admitted, "especially when you're responsible for many people's livelihoods. The pressure is enormous." "I get pressure," Marcus said, thinking of his sister's mounting medical debt. "Different kind, maybe, but I understand how it can eat at you." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching ships dock and undock outside the viewport. Marcus found himself oddly at peace despite his exhaustion. There was something refreshing about talking to someone who seemed as weighed down by responsibility as he was. "What do you do here?" Zara asked. "Waste management systems," Marcus said without embarrassment. "Keeps the station running, keeps people healthy. Not glamorous, but necessary. Essential work, Zara corrected firmly. Without people like you, places like this couldn't exist. Marcus looked at her with surprise. Most people, human or alien, look down on his profession. That's not usually how people see it. Then they're fools, Zara said with conviction. I've learned to value people who do essential work over those who simply manage wealth. Something in her tone suggested she spoke from experience. Marcus was about to ask what business she was in when his comm device chimed. That's my cue, he said, standing reluctantly. Back to the waste systems. Zara stood as well. Marcus Chen, she said formally, extending her hand in the human style. Thank you for your kindness. I won't forget it. Her handshake was firm, and Marcus noticed calluses on her palms, unusual for someone in business unless that business was particularly hands-on. Take care of yourself, Zara, he said, and don't let the pressure crush you. Sometimes the solutions we need come from unexpected places. As Marcus walked back toward the maintenance section, he didn't see Zara pull out an advanced comm device or notice the small entourage of well-dressed Zilithians who approached her table. He didn't hear her quiet conversation about expanding, the search parameters, or considering unorthodox approaches to the succession problem. What Marcus Chen, waste management technician of Kepler Station, didn't know was that Zara Nth was actually Zara Nth Tel Andros, the wealthiest individual in 3-star systems, heir to a commercial empire that spanned dozens of worlds, and someone who had just spent the last year searching the galaxy for a mate worthy of preserving her family's genetic line. He also didn't know that his simple act of kindness, his practical wisdom, and his dedication to essential but unglamorous work had just made him the most interesting candidate she'd encountered in her entire search. And he certainly didn't know that the coffee he'd bought for 12 credits was about to change both their lives in ways neither could imagine. But he would learn all of this very soon. After all, Zara Nth Tel Andros hadn't built an interstellar empire by letting opportunities slip away, especially not opportunities that came disguised as simple human decency.